Good day and welcome to the Walk Off. I'm Scott Belford, joined as always by the best co-host in the biz, Adam Mack. And Mr. Mack, the catcher hot stove continues to heat up as the winter meetings approach for next week here. Jon Morosi just loves throwing fire or throwing gas on this catcher fire, right? Because there's about 6 teams of need for a starting catcher. And Sean Murphy with the A's is out there. Of course, he was just tied to the Oakland Athletics. Jon Morosi behind that little insider information. Just today, he mentioned that, in fact, I think this came out yesterday as well, that the Cardinals and the Jays look like a good fit. Danny Jansen for Lars Nootbaar. Wilson Contreras is still out on the free agent market. He's being tied to the Houston Astros. There is some things that are going to happen in the next couple weeks here, probably as soon as early next week during these winter meetings. And I think it's going to kind of clear up this shroud of mystery around the catching position. So let's start with and get into the Blue Jays.
So winter meetings commence on Sunday.
Yes.
Right? That's when the guys will be landing, getting into their hotel rooms. I don't expect too much news on Sunday. But as early as early Monday morning, on the West Coast, you're waking up 8 a.m., you might be waking up to some news by that point.
3 days of hardcore meetings. All the general managers are going to be on location for the first time since before the pandemic. So I think we are going to see some major talks happen and speculation come out because this is the first time that, 30 general managers have been in one place at the same time. Now, Jon Morosi, like we touched on, and I think we'll throw the tweet up here, but just mentioned that Danny Jansen and Lars Nootbaar could be swapped between the Jays and the Cardinals.
Yeah,
now,
so this comes from the Katelyn McGrath article
yeah.
in The Athletic, where she put those two names together. So just to be clear, this is not the same thing as, sources are saying that these teams are in talks and are working on a deal to package these two together. It's not the same thing as that, so let's just throw a little bit of water on it. This is just speculation from a legitimate person with reason to speculate.
It's easy to look at, and I love that we're saying that because it's easy for fans to just take every little bit that comes out from some of these major sports analysts and view them as on par with each other. Obviously, the sources with free agents is a lot more legitimate and more likely than trade rumors because there's so much speculation and extra things that go in to trades.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas signing a player, it's easy for an agent to slip some information or a front office member to slip some information. But a lot of times with trades, these two organizations don't want information coming out because it eliminates leverage.
Exactly.
And that's the last
thing.
It
Opens the door to competition swooping in. So when it is a trade, both sides tend to be a little more tight-lipped. Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, this is a fun little trade speculation. It does make sense for quite a few reasons. So let's just put Lars Nootbaar on the radar and let's dig into it and get to know Mr. Lars Nootbaar. Great name, by the way.
And we've talked about Lars several times because it is easy to look at this landscape and just use common sense. Oh, the St. Louis Cardinals needs a catcher. The Blue Jays have an excess of that. The Blue Jays need an outfielder. The Cardinals can provide that. Now, the only little tidbit here, now this doesn't mean that this is going to screw with the deal or anything like that, but the Cardinals front office has come out and said that they would like to add another lefty bat to their lineup. Lars Nootbaar is a lefty bat. So they would need to then put 2 lefty bats on their wish list if this is something they're moving. And this doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem there. Right? That can be accomplished. And depending on what kind of lefty bat they're after, those are out there on free agency. If they view the value of Danny Jansen higher than the value of a lefty bat, then I think that little tidbit is kind of irrelevant. The
Well,
catching position has supreme value.
one of the all-time greats, Molina, just walked
Yeti.
off into the sunset for the
Yes.
Cardinals. So they are definitely a team in need of an experienced catcher. I don't want to quite call Danny Jansen a veteran catcher yet. He's only got 300 games in the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
He's experienced, though. Knows how to call a good game. It does make sense.
One thing to keep in mind with this catching market, too, is that Sean Murphy with the Oakland Athletics is the other high-end catcher with term and affordability attached to his name. And I'm really curious to see how the Blue Jays play this, because Sean Murphy, they may just wait for him to go first and then start, being in talks with all of the other suitors.
Set the prices
now,
from there.
The only reason, Adam, I would see that not being the case is if they have locked in on someone they really, really want and do not wish to miss out because Oakland scoops them first. And I don't know if that's the case. Just the way this front office operates, I think they're more looking for a need than have an actual target. We've seen this front office have a target before. They went out and got George Springer. It was obvious that was a target. But I think in trade, they're more just looking for someone who's going to fill that area of need, a lefty bat, an outfield position, somebody to balance this lineup a little bit more. And let's get into Lars Nootbaar, because he does fit this bill. Now, listen, you look at his numbers throughout the 2022 season, and they are not eye-popping numbers. Adam, if you wish to go over the full year here, but there is a caveat we're going to get to.
All right, so on the year, 14 home runs. He played 108 games for the Cardinals. 14 home runs, batting average 228, slugging 448, OPS 788. So still a pretty decent OPS out of him, but pretty slow start to the year.
Eye-popping numbers, exactly. And I like the way you put that, because it was a slow start to the year. Now, for all the Blue Jays fans out there that take a look at this deal and start saying crazy things like Lars Nootbaar is a fourth outfielder, that is a misconception. This is a 25-year-old kid who's just recently broken into the league, and boy, did he heat up.
He's got 166 career MLB games over the first two seasons there. So 2021, he played 58. Last year, he played 108. We'll get into the contract in a second, but that's real nice value as well. But yeah, the second half of last season, so just from July 1st until October 5th, the batting average goes up to 253, the OPS 881 with a slugging of 507.
And I liked hearing this. I know you brought it up before we hit record. Of those 14 home runs, 12 of them
were in the second half. It's a 25 home run pace over 162. So
now
that's Teoscar relatively. I know Teoscar, I think, had one season where he did hit over 30 home runs, but
I mean, if you look at last year, he hit 25. Teoscar has some big power, but he's a hot and cold hitter. So if you can replace those 25 home runs with a 25 home run hitter from the left-hand side, yeah, that's what we're
better defender than Teoscar.
Another thing to keep in mind,
above average fielder in general, right? He's a pretty good.
He really is an above average fielder, and he would slot into center field, moving George Springer to right, something that I think has become even more apparent that this front office really truly views as an important thing to do in this offseason. Lars Nootbaar, 25 years old. Adam just said he's played just over a full season. He still has a high ceiling on him, and we could truly see him improve throughout the years. And that would be the hope with acquiring a Lars Nootbaar. Now, if you look at his Savant page, it's all red. Exit velo is excellent. all of these little caveats that you're looking for, the peripheral stats, if you will, look fantastic. Lars Nootbaar, contract-wise, this is probably the most appealing thing about the man. He is under contract till 2027. He's not even ARB eligible for 2 years. So he's like making the league minimum, $750,000 and some change for the next 2 years. This absolutely allows the Blue Jays to trade from an area of strength. Trading Teoscar, you're moving $14 million off the books. You're bringing back $750,000. You cross your fingers that the production is matched, and even if it's not, it's probably just going to be a step down. You balance the lineup a little bit, and you still got a bunch of money in the bank. And this is something that we've talked about with how much the Blue Jays have moved money around and tried to save with the Grishik move last year, Tappy off the books, Zimmer off the books, Teoscar off the books. You're at $25 million almost. Maybe they go big game hunting. We've talked this, right?
Lars Nootbaar, the more I'm looking at Teoscar's stats page, really feels like Teoscar Hernandez, but
from the
left-handed hitting and better defensively. But where Nootbaar is today is where Teoscar was in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we're, in theory, approaching the prime of Lars Nootbaar. Get him those affordable years, which, again, as you just touched on, those are the kind of moves that allow you to spend on a Justin Verlander for a couple of years or whoever the case may be, right? We've talked about this with guys like Kevin Biggio and even Santiago Espinal. Like, you need good guys for cheap. Like, you can't just build a team of 20 million a year guys and expect to do anything. So this is a really appealing fit for me.
The more I look into it, the more I like the idea of Lars Nootbaar. I don't particularly fancy him if we need to give up a Kirk or Moreno. I think that's too expensive, but I think Danny Jansen with some prospects might be something that I would be into. Now, the thing with trading Danny Jansen, you are trading your most veteran catcher, so it wouldn't even shock me to see them go out and get a guy like a Martin Maldonado, right? World Series champion, a backbone piece to that Houston Astros team over the last couple of years, and he'll be cheap, and he's a guy that you can probably stash on the bench to mentor Gabriel Moreno and Alejandro Kirk. So this is a little bit different than we've talked, right? Because we always viewed Danny Jansen as probably the keeper for that experience reason. But you know what? Danny Jansen definitely, if you just look at his ceiling, probably has a lower ceiling than these other two guys within the organization. And if you can move Jansen and fill that hole in center field, then it allows you to do something wild, like maybe go out and sign Cody Bellinger as your fourth outfielder. Let's say it's $10 million with an option, right? That's still pretty affordable, especially on a 1-year deal. Maybe you're in on Xander Bogaerts or Trey Turner, and you're thinking of moving.
Like, I just want to stop you here on this. The idea of the fourth outfielder, I think, is a derogatory term that I want to get away from.
Yeah.
Because Tapia was our fourth outfielder last year. He played a full season.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just in the way games get distributed, like, it is kind of George Springer is our number one outfielder, and then everything else is like 2A, 2B, 2C, and you play the matchups and you play the health. There's going to be so much work to go around. It'll be a hindsight move to go, who was our fourth outfielder last season, right?
Yeah.
So
it's like when Randall Grishik was our fourth outfielder and we watched him play as much as Tapia did.
Of course.
So I like the idea of just eliminating that fourth outfielder tag. I know one interesting thing with the Cardinals is they are deep at pitching as well. And I'm not saying that necessarily it would be worth going after a guy like a Jordan Hicks or something like that, but maybe it would. And maybe there's a little bit bigger deal with the Cards in the works here, something larger than Nootbaar for Jansen. Now, if you start including a guy like Moreno or Kirk, obviously the return is going to increase, and maybe that does allow you to pry a starting pitcher out of the hands of the St. Louis Cardinals. This is all speculation. We don't have a Jon Morosi tweet to throw up here, but like we talked about off the top, I feel like all trade stuff is speculation and just using your head to fill holes.
Well, let's speculate on this then on our way out here, because we are getting a little long in the tooth for this little news clip here.
Okay.
If the Blue Jays do, whether it's this deal or another deal, if Danny Jansen is the odd man out, Blue Jays go into next season with Alejandro Kirk and Gabriel Moreno, and we don't add a third veteran catcher. How do you feel about that?
I don't particularly like it, but also you can always pick up a veteran catcher at the trade deadline. That's an easy add.
All right. Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, they went out and picked up Don Mattingly. This is an organization that obviously is starting to change the way they view this clubhouse. And I think a little bit of experience is something that they might go out and try and get if they do move a Danny Jansen. Time will tell. We'll need to wait and see.
All right, let's wrap it up there then. We'll tease Joe Siddle joining the show.
Yes.
Next week. So
very lucky to have Joe back. He will be here on Wednesday to talk about anything that's gone on in the winter meetings. So keep your eyes out for that. Thanks again, everybody. We really appreciate this walk-off community. Take care of yourselves. Follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. And hey, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do throw us a like. Always appreciated. Take care.